sorry, Chair, they're all good to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Swansea Bay City Regional Joint Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, the 18th of March. I'm Councillor Timbo and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Just to ask everybody at home, if you need to ask any questions, if you could please raise your electronic hand. And for people in the chamber, if you could use your microphone and raise your hand when speaking. And Tom, if you could let me know if Councillor Wood has any questions, please.
Will do, Chair.
Thank you. This meeting is also going to be recorded and will be available for repeat viewing on the website following this meeting. For the purposes of declarations, I would like to confirm that we'll be scrutinising items 3 to 7. Democratic Services have received the following apologies. Councillor Cundy, Councillor Morgan and Tom.
And Councillor John Curtis.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any, please? No, I can't see anybody.
Chair,
sorry.
Chair, can I just say on the future role of the PMO agenda item, myself, Stephen Aldred-Jones and Pete Austin have a declaration of interest, so we'll leave the meeting at that. And I think, is that going to be considered at the end of the agenda?
What we're going to do on that one, just for members who weren't in the pre-briefing, we're going to take item 8, the forward work programme, before item 7. As you know, now we have 3 officers who need to leave the meeting. So rather than do item 7, fetch them back in and then do the forward work programme, we're just going to reverse it. So just for everybody to know.
Thanks, Chair.
No problem. So that's item 2. Right, we'll move on to agenda item 3. This is a financial monitoring report. It's on pages 3 to 10 and it's for information purposes. And Stephen, you taking this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So this report details the Q3 financial monitoring and the year-end position of the Joint Committee and the Portfolio Investment Fund for the current financial year 24-25. The report was reviewed by Joint Committee on the 13th of February. As always, I'll go through the report, not necessarily in the order it actually appears on the report. So I'd like to start off by drawing your attention to the annual investment forecast, section 3.2 of the report pack. That's on page 6. So as you know, the 24-25 portfolio investment budget was set at Q3 23-24, and this was at 255 million. So Q3 forecast, for the Q3 forecast for this financial year shows a projection of almost 166 million. So this is a slippage of 89 million. This is a vast improvement on Q2, where we had a projection of 100 million with a slippage of almost 156 million. So we've almost halved the slippage this year compared to Q2. But this highlights the need for all partners to be as accurate as possible when they complete their investment forecasts. So there's so you can see in the report where the slippage is, but I'll quickly go through some of them. You can see the City Deal grant expenditure. We had a budget for this year. So this is the drawdown of the City Deal grant. We had a budget of 70 million. We are predicting that's only going to be 16.6 million of that 70 million to be claimed this year. So that's a slippage of almost 54 million. So it's 24%, 25% spend on the grant this year. So as you're aware, the Joint Committee and the POMO are funded solely from the top slice generated from the City Deal grant drawdowns. And based on this projected grant drawdown, the top slice expected is only 249,000 this year. Public sector contributions are on target, and while the private sector is projected to be roughly 70% achieved this year. So slippage has been seen across all programmes in the City Deal. So there's details within the body report, and I'll quickly touch upon some of them. Sorry. So CILIG showing a £41 million slippage this year. So again, this is the same as what we reported in Q2. HAPS 15 million slippage. However, in 23-24, the previous financial year, they overachieved by 9 million. Hence, therefore, some of that slippage this year is due to overachievement in the previous year. And then the remaining 6 million of the City Deal grant spend has been allocated to schemes which will be spent in the next financial year. Pentre Owl slippage of 14 million. So this is due to resequencing of the private sector contributions, which will be achieved in future financial years. Digital infrastructure slippage of 7 million. This is due to delays in the dark fibre procurement. However, this has now been procured. And Swansea waterfront slippage of 5 million. This is due to preferred contract and the preferred contractor and developer have now been have now been selected with construction subject to planning approvals anticipated to start next year. And Uregin, so 4 million slippage. The project is intended to go through a change control process and have slipped all their spend into next year. So I'd like to stress that a lot of this is slippage in 24-25. This is, do we have a question?
Steve, if you carry on, and then I'll
Okay.
fetch Councillor Hawley in then at the end of your seminar.
Cool. So a lot of slippage in 24-25, the projects are projecting to spend all their grant elements and achieve all their spend in future financial years. So it's purely a timing issue, which I'll come on to now with the Portfolio Investment Fund in section 3.2 of the report. That's page 4 of the pack. So overall, the investment forecast position is 1.32 billion over the 15 years of the portfolio. So this is showing a small overinvestment of circa 39 million. So as you'd expect, you'd expect variances over any long-term capital project. So this 39 million, part of that is due to the digital infrastructure demonstrating 31 million over budget for its additional private sector funding, and Pentre Owl 12 million due to additional private sector investment for zones 2 to 4. And finally, moving on to the Portfolio Management Office. It's on page 4 of the report pack. So the year expenditure is estimated to be just under 500,000. The POMO staffing cost is estimated to be 431,000. And again, that includes the 24-25 pay award adjustment. So this is an underspend of 172,000 against budget. This is due to all posts being budgeted at the top of grade. And we have 2 staffing vacancies, the POMO manager and the project development manager. So the total cost for the Joint Committee, Accountable Body, Scrutiny and Audit is expected to be 3.7 million. Of this, however, 3 million is accounted for interest payable to partners. And then some of this 3.7 million is offset by the income of 249,000 for the top slice, as I mentioned earlier, and roughly 3 million of interest derived from cash balances held. That's cash balances held, meaning grant unclaimed by projects at this point. So then at the end of 23-24, so last financial year, we had a surplus within the Joint Committee and POMO of 183,000. This year, the estimated year-end position shows a deficit of 451,000. So once we offset the reserves, 183,000, we're looking at a reserve deficit balance of 268,000 at year end. This is purely a timing issue due to the drawdown of the grant and the top slice generated, and there's not a true deficit at this point in time. So that includes my summary of the Q3 report. I can see there's questions.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I'll fetch members in now. I can see Councillor Hawley first.
Thank you, Chair. On page 6, it's got the portfolio summaries, and it's got private sector total project capital of 242 million. That's the total cost, total amount. Then it's got 69,738,000, but the actual spend so far is £601,000. What's the explanation for that? It seems incredibly low.
Could you tell me the exact figure? Is it £601.33? Is that the figure you're looking
Yeah,
at?
that's the commitment.
Yeah.
The actuals to date is 69 million. I don't quite understand how that commitment fits in with the forecast.
So I think we're looking at the same table. So
it's that panel. It is on page. Was it page?
Page 6, is it 3.2
Yeah.
provisional annual investment forecast? See that one?
Yeah, it's the portfolio summaries. It is.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so there's a column called actuals to date, and that the grand total of that is 71.523 million. Just make sure we look at the same figure. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's at the bottom project, and yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So that's physically spent, or so that's all three elements. We got City Deal grant, we got the private sector and the public sector funding, and then we have the commitments column. So that's things we've spent but haven't physically had the invoice for, but are imminent.
Right. Okay.
So essentially has been spent. We just hasn't physically had the invoice. And then the forecast commitment is what we're projecting for the rest of the financial year.
Okay, I understand now what you mean.
Brilliant.
It is the sums of money which are going to be paid, but it's the question of when you actually receive the actual invoice for them.
It's a bit technical, but that's exactly
but it doesn't look correct. You know what I mean?
No, it does. Yeah, it's quite a. You think for this point, 3/4 of the way through the year, you'd have a lot more in actuals, but it's sitting there in the third column, the forecast commitments, and once they are realised or spent, as you say, they will then move across into actuals.
And Councillor Holly, the easy way to describe it is it's spend in the pipeline, if you like.
Yeah. But I didn't clear that. It wasn't very clear in it. Perhaps I'm pretty thick. I didn't understand that, but it wasn't very clear in it.
We'll check the word. Councillor Holly's a good point. We'll check the word in the paragraph above, and if we can provide clarity in that bit, we'll do that from the table. Yeah.
Thank you. The only other thing is, we draw down the grant money from Welsh Government or UK Government, what have you. When do you draw it down? Do you draw it down when the projects start, or when or is there waypoints within the project? Or did the Welsh and the UK government say you can have it on the 14th of January or whatever?
We get our annual allocation from Welsh and UK government on a yearly basis. This year we've received the grant offer letter for this year of 34 million. So that's been signed and returned back to Welsh Government. We're hoping to receive 34 million imminently, so it's before the end of the month. But as of spend, it's due on a profile to 1/15 of over the 15 years. So, for example, if a project was to spend if they had 10 million, they couldn't claim it all they couldn't receive it all in the first year. They'd have 1/15 of that 10 million as time progresses. But there are certain milestones as well. They have to achieve before we can pay.
I thought we changed the actual time period from 15 to 10 years.
Well, UK government have front loaded it, some of theirs. It's not as straightforward as 1/15. It is 15 yearly payments, but over that, some of those are front loaded or heavier payments to start with. Yeah.
It's complicated. What Stephen's trying to explain is complicated, but basically, UK government provide the funding over 10 years, Welsh government over 15. So that's up to 2033 for Welsh government. But because they, as Stephen said, front loaded it, concertinaed it into a smaller period, we get more of the UK government funding quicker. But to put it into reality, with the arena, of the time that they spent the eligible spend and to date, so up to 8 years, they get the each year equivalent of that, the 10th for UK government, the 15th for Welsh government, up to the point of that drawdown of funding. And we get that annually, as Stephen said, and that's based on what progress we make on the portfolio that we have to present each year.
Right, it's okay. There are waypoints on it then, which the governments will ask you for, and once you've done that, then the sums of money are released.
Yeah, we have to provide a portfolio business case update, which will be probably with you in the next quarter, because that's when we schedule to do it. And we are then subject to scrutiny, if you like, by a joint implementation board, myself and Chris Moore, and we have to present the progress update on our portfolio to release the next tranche of funding, the annual drawdown.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member have any other questions? Okay, if not, as previously mentioned, this report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Right, moving on to item 4, Q3 Swansea Bay City Deal Portfolio Monitoring 24-25. This is on pages 11 to 84. John, can I fetch you in?
Of course you can. Thanks, Chair. I'll follow the same format as we've used before. You'll notice that with these now, they're on new templates. I think you had it last quarter as well on the new templates, but this is now embedded and in place. So hopefully the information provided was a bit clearer with a lot more concise information in there. But I'll run through the dashboard information first, and then I'll go into a few project specifics. So in terms of what we call the RAG status, the red, amber, green, so this is for Q3 monitoring. The only change really to note is skills. If you remember previously, they came and presented, so Sam presented at board, and the apprenticeships figures were lower than what should be anticipated at this stage. So they've moved that from green to amber, and the scope from amber with apprenticeship figures. So that is reflected in where they are, and they're working with all the partners involved to look at how they improve those apprenticeship figures, mitigations around that. In terms of red risks, there is no change. There's 3 current portfolio red risks. The first one being increased in construction costs. Pete Austin's here today. He'll give you an update on that status and the report that we produced. The projects programs not delivering on their outcomes within the business cases as stipulated from the outline business cases. That's the second red risk. And then the third one is around the flood risk management 1015 mapping. And again, we're waiting for feedback from Welsh Government and Natural Resource Wales as to how that will be mitigated in coming, well, hopefully weeks from what we gather. So those are the 3 red risks. In terms of red issues, there are 2. It was the same as the previous quarter. So Stephen's covered off the first one. It's in-year slippage or reforecasting. That's what we're applying it, the terminology as. So that is the projects and programs looking at in-year slippage, and we're in a better position now in Q3 than we were in Q2. Hopefully by Q4 we will have caught up a little bit again. And then it's more of the wider slippage in terms of delivery. So it's against project milestones. A lot of it is driven and evident through financials, but it's also the deliverables of outputs, being buildings or a course that you might run, and then the kind of wider impact associated with the infrastructure that's being built. So those are the 2 red issues, and the difference between risks, there's a possibility that could happen as opposed to issues where they are actually happening and we need to put resolutions in place. So those are the red issues and red risks. In terms of the benefits, we do have a bit of movement. So jobs, we've had an increase of 119 jobs between Q2 and Q3. So we're now up to 742. That increase is due to the waterfront project providing job creation through construction. And then we've got investment to date. That's increased by 64 million between the quarters. So we're now up to 459 of the 1.3 billion investment. And then you've got a procurement schedule as well. There is a few changes, it's noted in the report, but there's minimal change from Q2 to Q3. So there's nothing necessarily to highlight with that, Chair. So if I often do pause here in case anybody has any questions on the portfolio dashboard.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Has any members got any questions, please? No, I can't see any.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to ask Jonathan. You know, you were on about the increase in the jobs. It's up to 700 odd. Well, you know, it is a bit disconcerting when you see that the totals for the number were something like 9,500 or 9,700 and what have you. What is our current projection? Because it is quite worrying that we've lost lots of jobs in the area, and the idea was to create more employment, etc. And it just what's your basic view on it? Are we in line to do that, or are we quite some way off yet?
So so it's a valid question, and one that does often reoccur. So our target of what we set with the governments initially was 9,000 jobs created. We are now forecasting 9,700 jobs. So what we are forecasting is more than what we were originally required to deliver. But that said, what we have reported there is direct jobs, largely, not fully, but largely around construction. In terms of the operation and then the wider outcomes going into impact of what we're doing for the infrastructure and the businesses that we're housing within those infrastructure buildings, they are yet to be recorded in here. So I've said this previously, Councillor Holly, but until we actually get an evaluation through the process, you won't see those numbers jump up of significance. They will be the incremental ones that you're seeing currently. So that all of that said, we are delayed in several of the infrastructure, in terms of where we are for project pipeline. We have 7 completed projects out of the 36 things that exist across the business cases. So what I would expect to see is probably that sort of number with 6 things being completed, but we do have a lot of things in the pipeline. So the numbers are around 17 projects or infrastructure related projects. They're in the pipeline. And again, as soon as those start moving forward and being built and then going into operation, we should see those numbers jump up. Yeah, and we do this is because it's a red risk for us in terms of delivery, and we are monitoring it and mitigating against it. We do have things like evaluation profiles, and we have all the benefits definitions and what that actually means, the forecasting of when they hope to get those in. We are on top of that in terms of reporting, but that is an entire conversation in itself, where you could look at every single project with every deliverable, which could be in the over 100 things to be delivered, jobs being one of them.
Yeah, I quite understand that. I'm looking at the 71, 72, the Kingsway, and the projected jobs in there. And one of the companies that's gone in there at the moment, we wait to see what the other companies bring in. But the one that goes in at the moment is a flexible office space provider, taking 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Now, it could be 10 people working in there. There could be 100 people working in
Exactly.
there. It's very, very difficult to say. So that I accept that's one, but it's the other jobs that are really important. And I take your point, until they're up and running and engaged and the contracts are signed, you won't be able to see a large increase in that. But thank you anyway. I do ask regularly. I know I'm a bit of a nuisance, but
I'd be disappointed if you didn't ask, Councillor Holly, because it's the proof in the pudding of the successful portfolio. So yeah, we have to be on that, and the other deliverables that are a part of the portfolio as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for that. Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to ask Jonathan. He states 742 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he could break them down a little bit into areas. For instance, I'm particularly interested in the Pembroke Dock Marina, and that area is very, low income, and jobs are so important to us. Can you give us an idea of how many have been created?
Yeah, we do have the numbers broken down. I'm not sure if you have them in the dashboard broken down by project. Let me just double check on the report. So we do have the numbers. They're all auditable in terms of every job created. But sorry, it's taking a while to load up. So on which page would this be in your report? Sorry, it's very small. All right, so jobs created. There's a benefits summary in the dashboard, the 5A document, and each of the 9 business cases to add up to the 742, all the jobs created FTE numbers are in there. So if I take the one that you just picked out with Pembroke Dock Marine, currently reported, Councillor Bowen, so I must stress that, because there are more jobs created, but 77 is what we got logged for Pembroke Dock Marine. But as I said to Councillor Holly, we know the numbers will be higher They just haven't been reported through the process yet because they haven't done their evaluation on the wider jobs created at this point. But they are still quite early on as well because the infrastructure was only completed last summer. So you would expect there to be a bit of a time in it, if you like, issue around building it, getting it occupied, and then stuff happening behind that.
Of course. Yes. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
No worries. It's fine.
Okay, Councillor Bowen, you happy with that?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sparks?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan. Can I just ask on that with the jobs created, and it's just to help me understand really, but if we use Pembroke Dock as the example, so they've had the work done down there to improve the slipways. When we did the site visit, we saw that it's very good. And the jobs created, is that including the people then that have done that work as full-time jobs, because that work is completed, so they're not still employed?
No.
Are they? So could you explain, if it's 77 jobs, are they still there in Pembroke Dock working, or have they been employed for a period of time and now they're no longer there? Because I think that's where I don't know. I mean, that's certainly what I'm interested in terms of long-term jobs.
Just sustainable jobs. So I get the question. So yes and no. So what we do, we've got a definition for jobs created, and what we've stipulated in there is that we pro rata jobs. So if it's a fractional appointment or over a certain time, it could be 6 months, a week, whatever it ends up being, they have to pro rata it to a full-time equivalent. That's what we monitor. What we stipulate in that definition is that individual or an accumulation of individuals to create an FTE have to be employed for at least 12 months. Okay, so it's either a fractional appointment or a permanent. In terms of the sustainable jobs, I think a lot of those will come after the construction, when the businesses reside within the infrastructure and around the infrastructure, and those would come more through the impact reports as opposed to a direct job created from construction or the companies involved in the construction of the building itself, or in your case, the Pembroke Dock infrastructure. So, but there are jobs we know in the mix of those where people directly associated with them are employing project managers or finance managers or whoever it might be directly related to those. But I would say the majority of what you've got there is more from the construction side of things at this point. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you very much. Does any other member have any other questions, please? Or have we got anything to add on to that, Jonathan, before
Chair, I'm happy to continue doing the project updates. I'm only going to highlight a few bits and pieces across there for people to get a feel, the members to get a feel for where we are and what we're progressing with, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start in order, or hopefully in order of what you've got in your report. So support and innovation, low carbon growth, led by Neath for Talbot. So in the document, this is obviously a couple of months out of date now, but the occupancy rates for the Bay Technology Centre is 65%. Verbally, we've been told that is now increased to around about 80%, but getting tenants over the line for a lot of these infrastructure projects is taking longer than probably what we would hope to, particularly around legal documents and contracts and all those sort of things. But they are increasing, but what they're holding out on is making sure that the right type of tenants are going in there. So even though it's currently reported at 65, it is likely to increase to at least 80%, and there is a pipeline of tenants looking to occupy that space. The other one, which is in the report, which is worth noting, is the project called Switch. It's all about decarbonisation of steel. Obviously very topical with the whole situation with Tata Steel, but they've submitted for planning approval. As it happens, that planning approval since the report has been approved. So they now can progress with that. And Switch did receive extra funding through the transition board for Talbot Steel. So that means that project can go ahead. So that's really good news. One other, there's lots of stuff in there, but one other one I would like to pick out because it's a good news thing. There's a property development fund that is looking at new builds or refurbishments of property around, particularly Port Talbot, around Harbourside sort of area, and Baglan Energy Park. That has been oversubscribed. So in other words, there are more people wanting to access that fund, private sector companies, than what they have available. So what they are looking at, and this is a projection, that they are going to overachieve with what they have in terms of private sector leveraged investment for that. So some good things moving in the right direction for low carbon. In terms of skills and talent, again, they've increased the number of pilot projects. It's reported 24. The project lead told me yesterday they're up to about 29, but that was a verbal update. And they are looking at the apprenticeship skills development projects to make sure that they are maximising what they can deliver around the apprenticeships, particularly in light of what we had reported recently. Pentra Owl, Canolfan is the first phase of Pentra Owl. I think, Chair, you've got a site visit coming up for scrutiny members, which is brilliant because to physically see it, I think is very impressive. There's the completion from Bouygues to handover to Carmarthenshire Council. It's estimated to be spring in the report. That's likely to slip by a couple of months. So we are pushing a little bit into the summer, but it's all on track in terms of delivery. And there are things happening within the building now for things like fit out. They're looking at tenants and things like that to start populating it later in the year as well. Lots of things around digital. Again, they're overachieving on several things. And Stephen just mentioned about one of their procurements. It was a little bit more delayed than what they planned, but they have now progressed that. They are looking at increasing their private sector funding beyond what they targeted, which is great news. And again, what that has demonstrated both to the region, but also outside of the region, is how the programme bringing relationship managers across the local authorities and other partners, how they are. It is basically a flagship project in how they're working. The collaboration amongst the partners in the region is paying dividends, and they are seen externally as a kind of a trailblazer in this area. So that's really good news, and we are now seeing more and more digital connectivity happening across the region in a faster way than what we probably envisaged at the start of the programme. Onto the waterfront, the Kingsway. So Swansea Council took possession of the building, the 71-72 building, in December. There's lots of progress happening, as Councillor Holly just mentioned, about tenants. I think Councillor Stewart has said that by the launch of the Kingsway, they hope to get 100% occupancy or near to. So I hope that is the case. And we hope to launch that around June. There's no date being set just yet, but that's approximately when we hope to launch that. But what we do have is the Innovation Matrix, which is down in SA1, led by University of Wales Trinity St David. That is now open and operational. They're talking of their tenancy agreements to be in the region of 80 to 90%. There's already a lot of people in there already operating, and these are businesses. And we have the official launch with ministers next Monday. So that's great news and good to see that opening. And then the precinct, which is the other Trinity-led part of the project with Swansea Council, that's kind of in a discussion point at the moment, looking at a delivery model and where that would be located within the city. But that is yet to go through a change control process. Stephen's already mentioned their Egham Phase 2. Egham Phase 1 is still literally 100% occupancy, so that's continued to operate really well. And Phase 2 will go through a view of what delivery solution there could be for Egham Phase 2, but that is all within the university at the moment. There's nothing to report on what that solution could look like. The last couple of projects, Holmes's power stations, again, good work being done on that around the supply chain management. They've had an event in recent times down in Botanical Gardens, and that was looking at heat pumps. But they're looking at working with lots of businesses. They now have demo houses in Port Talbot for any of the members who have been to visit that. I've been there, and it's really good to go and see physically what these houses will have within them, both the fabrication and the technology. They're rolling out the money for the incentive fund to lots of housing associations. They're looking towards local authority and private sector housing as well. So, and I know you've had quite a lot of engagement with Holmes's power stations, and Una's been to board previously. Pembroke Marine, they're continuing to progress things around the Pembroke Dock infrastructure, the demonstration zone, the training facilities, and also the university business collaborations. And what a lot of the partners are doing down in Pembroke Dock Marine are looking for leveraging funds, government and private sector, around all the activity that they do for things like birthing and testing type stuff of technologies in the Haven. So there's lots of things going on down there, and again, a lot of information in the report for that. And then finally, Chair, there's the campuses project. So they have just recently appointed a main contractor. They hope to be on site, I was told, within the next month or two, to start demolition and build of Singleton Phase 1, which is down by Sketty Lane, and also working with the hospital for the Phase 1 refurbishment, which has a number of precursor things that have to happen, and decanting of other hospital services so that they can start the kind of business incubation centre up in Morriston. But in parallel with those two progressing, we also have the 5G Vodafone bid, which is in conjunction with digital, that they're progressing, and they're also looking at the Phase 2 side of things for both sites, for Morriston and Singleton, in parallel with the Phase 1. I could spend probably another hour, Chair, on just those, because there's a lot of information, but I think just running through those as highlights, that hopefully gives you a feel for lots of progress and things moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. That's really great to know what's going on and everything is coming up. Would any members have any questions, please? No, I can't see any. This report is for information purposes, so we note the report. So moving on to item 5, construction impact assessment, pages 85 to 102. This is for information, and over to you, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, so what you have before you is the latest iteration of the construction impact assessment that we carry out. We have been carrying out since 2022, really, as a result of well documented macro things that were affecting construction. So where we are with it now is that Programme Board have asked us to focus on the future elements of business case development that are construction dependent. There's about 23 of them, and we could take out 7 of those 23 for the projects that have completed or are about to complete. And then that is Matrix and Canal Van for Pembroke, for Petra Owl. So what we do is we do 2 things. We assess the likely increase in costs to a project through inflation, and we use things like the BCIS registers and other sort of standard formats of projection to look at the cost. And then we ask the projects to look at that potential increasing cost and do a risk assessment on how it might affect the delivery of the business case. So up until now, the construction cost assessment has been done on a project basis, project by project, but the overall risk assessment or issues assessment has been done on a business case level. So it's the whole thing packaged together. What we've been asked to do now is to look at the forecasted risks and issues for future elements that are yet to be delivered. So we are now going to look at not only the costs, but the risks and issues for each individual project. And this is starting with this return that we've asked the projects to do now. So what you have in front of you is the completed element of the 7 projects that are done, and then the explanation of how we're going to take it forward. So we have a sight of potential risks and issues for those yet to be delivered. And the primary focus really is on Petra Owl, because they have an awful lot of stages in their zones, the 4 zones that they have, which are they're not necessarily time bound in as much as they will happen at certain times. They will happen as market dictates and things like that. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in that program, and we need to sort of be cited, and by we I mean all of us in the City Deal family, yourselves and the programme board and joint committee, and obviously the funding bodies, and can be assured that they are still deliverable. So the key takeaway really from this iteration of the report is that of those projects yet to be delivered where we can actually put a cost, we anticipate that there's probably a 42.6 million shortfall, and that's very conservative because there are some fairly sizable chunks of that we don't even have a cost on yet because it's yet to go to market. So we would hope that by the next time this comes around to scrutiny, you'll start to see the individual elements of the report filled out for the future projects that are to be delivered. And what this will do, obviously, because we're adding more elements into it, we're potentially going to see more risks and issues coming out in the table. But what we have to do is we have to caveat that by saying, look, this means it's more manageable because we're breaking it down into pieces, and we can, if there are issues or any major red issues that we need to look at or red risks, we can start focusing on those early in the process rather than waiting until it's a problem further down the line. So this particular iteration of the report that you've got in front of you shows no construction costs or concerns from that perspective, and that's basically down to what's been happening in the last year, really. So projects are coming to those 7 projects are coming to fulfilment, but there's a bit of a gap behind them now for the next set of projects to start being delivered. There were some changes to the risks, mainly in the right way. We lost a couple of red risks and high ambers from PDM because they reassessed due to where they are in their process of completion of construction. They reassessed their risk and it brought the table down. So it is a moving feast as we go forward. And the next, as I say, the next iteration of this report will be much more detailed for the future packages to be delivered. Happy to take questions on that if there are any.
Thank you for that, Peter. Do any members have any questions, please? No, I can't see anybody. This report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Moving on to item 6, private sector investment report, pages 103 to 126. This is for information, and it's over to you, Peter, again.
Yeah, very, very quickly, actually, this one, because Stephen covered most of this in the financial report earlier on.
Okay.
So the headline figures is that the forecast from projects remains positive, and we're looking at a forecast of over what we originally looked at in the profile of some 32 million, and that's over the original target of 637. It continues to be a very positive report, down to several of the projects overachieving. And this is actually an amber risk to us. It was a red, but we've reduced it to amber because of the confidence we're getting back from the projects that they will be achieving what they're looking for. And I think it's down to a bit of a sign of the times, really, where we are, particularly with projects like digital. Where it's very timely and there's a lot of interest in it and a lot of need for it. So they really are forging ahead way above what they originally anticipated in the business case. So I don't really have much more to add to that. As I said, Stephen covered some of the elements of it earlier on, so I don't need to repeat those really. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Would any members like to have any questions, please? No, I can't see any. As mentioned, this is report is for information purposes, so we note the report. As previously stated, we're going to do item 8 forward work programme before item 7 because the 3 officers have to declare and they will be leaving the meeting. If you do want to rejoin after, by all means, but we have nothing on that. So we're going to move on to item 8 forward work programme first. And over to you, Tom, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd give members a brief sort of update on where we are. As you know, site visits have been quite prominent this year for the committee, and members had the recent visit to the HAP site in Margam, looking at the retrofit. So I know that Chair, you attended, and Councillor Dacey did as well. So you might wish to mention the visit later. Just a bit of sort of admin, I suppose. As you're aware, we've booked in the site visit to Pentre Owl, which will be on the 7th of April. I've put it in everyone's calendars, but I'll also send out a further email just providing you all with a bit more information and some telephone numbers that may be useful on the day, and also be chasing some members up for their high visibility vest sizes and safety boot sizes as well. Members may remember as well that a request was made to visit 71 and 72 Kingsway. So I'm working with officers on a suitable date for that, because I know they're trying to tie in the visits into one day with all the stakeholders. So I should know a little bit more probably by the next quarter. So I'll get a dates out to you all on that. And then in terms of meetings, as I mentioned to some members in pre-briefing, our May the 13th meeting is going to be cancelled now due to some conflicts in the schedule and changes with a joint committee schedule. We're not able to get another meeting in now this civic year, so we may add an additional meeting at the beginning of next civic year just to cover anything that we miss in their May meeting now. But I'll send a formal confirmation out to everyone about the cancellation, and I'll update you all as soon as I know what the new civic programme will be for those meetings. I don't believe I have anything else to update you on, Chair, so I'll just hand everything back to you now.
Okay, thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, we had the HAPS site visit, and I had the pleasure of Tom, Jonathan, Francis, the MPT Chief Executive, and the executive from Titarian. And I think at the end of the day, they all thought, why the hell don't he shut up? As we know, the two houses which have been done up, one property was empty, which has cost approximately, I believe, 60k to do the whole house up to the standard that they wanted. The second house is occupied, so that was 20k spent on that just to do what the tenant wanted them to do. It is worth a site visit if anybody can ever get there. But I do believe, Jonathan, that they'll possibility of looking one down towards Pembroke Way.
Well, they're investigating it at the moment and trying to get funding to do that, Councillor, because people aren't necessarily travelling, particularly around the businesses, to travel up to Port Talbot from down Pembrokeshire direction. So they're looking at the options and possibility to do that, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah, totally agree. There was a few concerns, but it's nothing to fetch by her. But I'll fetch Andrew in because he was the other ward member that went there.
Yeah, it's very positive visit. There was housing associations from Cardiff and Newport areas who were taking an interest in it. Obviously, the expense was a little bit too high, in my opinion, to sort of equip these houses. But I mean, if the housing associations are going to take that money, use their money and grant money, then they're good ideas. But it's a lot of money, 60k, I thought it was personally.
Jonathan?
It's probably worth noting on that, because we knew when HAPS was developed as a business case and the delivery of it being 5 years, we knew that the first however many thousands of houses that would have all these technologies of fabrication, they would cost more. But the whole aim was that as more becomes mainstreamed, the unit cost will come down. And I was talking to the project manager yesterday only about this, and they are seeing signs of costs being reduced for things that are being put on the homes, whether it's solar panels, whether it's air source heat pumps, etc. They are starting to see the costs being reduced, which will make it more affordable. I'm not saying it's going to halve the cost or whatever. It will make it cheaper, and hopefully that will continue as a trend throughout the delivery process as well.
If I recall, Jonathan, as well, I think they've had more funding as well from other streams as well because of what they're doing there as well. So
yes,
they are doing really, really positive work there for well, hardly any cost to us at the minute. So
that's right.
Yeah, I think one of the main concerns was that everything is going towards social housing at the moment, and it's the private homeowner that's going to, it's going to be out of their range to start doing this, and unless new builds are going to take this on, and we make sure the new builds are done. But that's for another debate. So there we are. That's the forward work programme anyway. And I'd like to thank you. Thank you to Jonathan, Peter and Stephen for your time this afternoon. I know you've got to leave us now. If you do want to rejoin after, but we'll speak to you in the next meeting otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Hi, Tom. Can you just confirm that they've all left, please?
Just checking out, Chair. Yes, all the officers have left that said they needed to go. Okay,
thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, the future role of the POMO. These are on pages 127 to 132. And I'll hand over to Debbie Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's helpful. Thank you. I'm the monitoring officer for the City Deal, so I'm presenting this report, but it's actually been prepared by others as well. So we have Paul Thomas, the Deputy Chief Executive in Carmarthenshire, and Craig Griffiths, the legal officer in Talbot. So it's a joint report, but I'm presenting it today. The report sets out what the purposes of the review of the POMO at this point in time. This report's gone through Programme Board and it's gone through Joint Committee on the 13th of February, and it's been endorsed by the Joint Committee. And the purpose is to undertake a review of the support that's provided by the POMO to the Joint Committee, because primarily the funding is running out for the funding of the project, the Programme Management Office. You'll see from the report that it's been funded by a top slice from the government funding, the 1.5% top slicing, which Stephen has spoken about. And in the early years, it was funded by partner contributions as well. But those partner contributions stopped in 2023, and the top slicing is not sufficient to be able to fund the POMO going forward. So it's been driven by that, primarily by the lack of funding, but also to look at see whether we can make efficiencies and to make better use of the support services, perhaps across a broader regional basis, because we've also got the CJC operating in the area, and we were looking at possible alignments with the work undertaken by the CJC to see whether the POMO could be used across that wider regional footprint. So the report sets out, there's a appendix 1 there, which is the financial profile, which has been prepared by Chris Moore, and then the terms of reference are on appendix 2, which is on page 131. The terms of reference, these have been endorsed by the Joint Committee, but as you can see, it's a representative group of officers from across the 4 councils. So we've got Paul Thomas, as I mentioned there, myself and Craig, and then Chris Moore, who is the 151 officer for both City Deal and the CJC. And then we've got the directors with responsibility for economic development from each of the 4 councils being there, because they're key really to understanding what support is needed to deliver the functions of both the City Deal and the CJC. So we've put at paragraph 2 of the terms of reference there what the review will cover, and it will look at the governance framework, the decision-making structures, accountability, affordability, transparency mechanisms of the City Deal, consider then alignment with the CJC, the regional transport, the planning, the economic regeneration, identify overlaps, gaps, opportunities for alignment, and provide recommendations then to enhance collaboration, enhance governance and enhance delivery. So on methodology, paragraph 3, we're looking at which members of staff are included within the scope of the review, because obviously we've got staff who are directly funded in the POMO, but also staff that are on SLA arrangements, but they are also funded by City Deal grant funding. So we need to look at who's in scope, Consult with those staff members as appropriate, because it's important that we hear from them as to what they see as the future of the support needed to deliver across both City Deal and the CJC. We need to look at the requirements and the expectations of Welsh Government and UK Government, because although the projects are well into the delivery phase, or most of them are, you'll know that the delivery is staggered across. It's different, but depending on different projects. There is going to be an ongoing requirement to report on outputs to both Welsh Government and UK Government, and that's going to be key going forward, that we meet those expectations of reporting on those outputs sufficient to satisfy funding arrangements. And then we've got we're looking at the small number 3 there, to look at CJC functions and governance arrangements and the potential for alignment. To consider other delivery models, because there are different POMO delivery models elsewhere in Wales, and to consider as well what resources we've already got available to each of the councils internally, because we've got officers very much involved in the delivery of projects in each of our councils. So we need to look at how they fit into the whole support mechanism, and we need to engage with government. So that's the report in a nutshell, Chair. It's early days in the sense of it was approved by Joint Committee last month. Meetings have taken place. There are further meetings planned. Dialogue is ongoing at the moment with some key people involved in that. Audit Wales are being consulted as well. But I can't at the moment give you any timescale for completion of the work and reporting back, which I know is probably one of the key questions you want to ask, is when is it going to be ready? So I don't have a timeline for that yet, but I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair, from anyone in the committee.
Okay, thank you for that, Debbie. Much appreciated. Councillor Hawley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Debbie. My real concern about this is the linking it with other organisations. As you've noticed through the discussions that are taking place, this is specifically very different from all the other organisations that you mentioned, the joint committees, that type of thing, even, the old switch and whatever. So it is a very, very particular to the city deal and the delivery of what I consider the most important aspects of this, about the infrastructure and then the ability to create jobs, etc. So I think, whilst I understand what you say and I understand the cost concerns and what have you, my concern is that if we will produce a camel from a committee where we need a proper organisation, which is currently running it, and it seems to be doing a good job. And my fear is that we are going to try and fix something which isn't broken, and that is a concern. And I think, I'm not sure what other members feel, but I think we need to seriously think about what we do with this. If it's going to cost more money to top slice off the various grants we have, then so be it. But, I do think that it is working, and we've got to be careful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Chris. Yeah, I totally agree on that. We need to be very careful moving forward. Councillor Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. I put myself in a difficult position here. I disagree with Councillor Holly and yourself, Councillor Bowen, as well. I think there is clearly a need now, as Swansea Bay City Deal, which has done wonderful things for the area and continues to deliver, not least of all Canolvan arriving this summer in Carmarthenshire. It's all very good, but it all ties in. There's clear overlaps with the CJC, the massive overlaps with the CJC, and we've got two separate structures which are costing our residents to maintain. And I welcome this report in terms of a review of seeing what there must be some amalgamation possible between the two, which is really all this is looking at doing. Is there's things that the CJC does, the strategic development reviews, they're very similar to the Swansea Bay City deal, except that that it's tied specifically to project development and capital development. But that's the sort of work that the CJC is expected to do too. So I think that there's clearly overlap, and I was surprised actually, Councillor Bone, because you were on the CJC scrutiny as well, that you didn't recognise those yourself. But there we are. That's one of those things. I was going to ask Debbie about the timelines, but you were quite clear there have been meetings, and there are going to be other meetings, and you can't be more specific at the moment. I understand that. That's fair enough. But I think, given the Swansea Bay City deal is coming towards the end of its delivery and timeline, and we've got some wonderful projects that have happened, it makes sense for us to review how we're delivering it. And it's not that anything's broken. I don't think that's the case at all. I agree with Chris to the extent that this is an effective organisation. It's just that there are clear overlaps, and surely we should look at that, because we all know we've all just gone through the trauma of agreeing budgets again. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Yeah, Russ, it's quite an awkward one for me being on the both of them. That you chair on one, vice chair on the other. I think the Welsh government are expecting too much out of all the councils with funding for the CJC and so forth, and expecting what they want us to do. Basically, there's only so much money in the pot, and like you said, it's the residents. We got to be careful they're not going to be footing the bill in the end. So yeah, I got to be careful which way I go. I agree on both sides, so I won't get too involved in that. Back over to you, Chris.
Yeah, I welcome Richard Russell Sparks, Councillor Russell Sparks' comments, because I think it is important that we have this debate, and I think it's really important that if there are synergies or if there is overlaps, that if they come back and they tell us about it, because I'm not sure what the overlaps would be or what they are, but I do think this debate is healthy to have, and have it out in the open so we know what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Debbie?
Just to come back, Chair, if it assists, yes, Councillor Holly, completely take on board your comments. We'll be looking at all options, and one of those options might be for things to remain as they are. Clearly, that's always an option, but there are overlaps as we see them at the moment between the work of the City deal and the work of the city. But it's important that we don't get to a situation where we're not fulfilling our responsibilities in terms of City deal as well. We've got to meet the clear expectations of governments on City deals, and we've got to finish, the job through to the end of the 15 years. I think it's quite clear that there was a lot of work up front on these projects, getting them up and running and over the line. That work is bound to decrease as the projects progress, and the emphasis is more there on reporting on outputs than there is on implementation. So I think there will be some, without sort of prejudging it, I think there will be clearly some overlap of functions, and there will be some discussion around is there a need to maintain the full resource on City deal, or should it be used in a more effective, efficient way? So yes, I don't know if that assists, but Councillor Holly, yes, we will be keeping an open mind on everything. And yes, I'm sorry, Councillor Spark, not to be able to give you a date. There is, I can assure you, there is a pressing need for us to report swiftly. We don't want to be leaving it months and months and months. So we're going to hopefully get an options paper, with some outcomes in, I would hope, in the next couple of months, really, because we shouldn't be taking forever to do this piece of work. It's quite straightforward in the sense of the parameters of it.
Russell, you need to come back in.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just agree with you, Chair, thankfully this time. I completely, the funding, the funding from Welsh Government has to come through in order to resource and support the running of these organisations, you know, the CJC particularly. But I also I forgot to say, because I was thrown a little bit at the beginning, that I welcome the membership of this group. I think it's really key that you know, all the councils are represented, but also you've got the CJC Section 151 officer, and the names are familiar to us because they also report for this as well. So there's and they're holding the same post, you know, in two organisations. So I can see, you know, that there's a really important key to make sure we report things correctly and scrutinise correctly, but also that there's definitely some overlaps here. And I would welcome, as Chris has said as well, the opportunity once that work's done to review what the options are and where the thinking is. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Russell, and thank you, Chris, for that as well. Does anybody else want to ask any question to Debbie? No, I can't see it. This report is for information purposes, so we note the report. There's item 12 is urgent items. I have no urgent items today. So I'd like to thank everybody for the good debate, especially on the last item. It's quite interesting. So let's hope the boxing gloves are off for next time. Thank you all very much. And thank you, Robert, for being in the chamber and keeping Tom company.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.
All the best.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.
Thank you, Chair.